The city always felt loud, even early in the morning. Cars moved like restless waves on a busy shore, horns echoing across narrow streets. And the constant hum of life never seemed to pause. In the middle of all this noise lived a young man who had come to the city with dreams of building a better future. At first, the city lights had excited him, but over time, the same lights started to feel heavy on his eyes. Days passed quickly, but the pressure kept rising. He worked long hours, sometimes so long that he forgot what it felt like to relax. His mind was always crowded with unfinished tasks, deadlines, and worries that stacked on top of one another. Some nights he lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled noise of the street below, wondering how life moved so fast and why he felt so stuck. He missed the simple feeling of peace. He couldn't remember the last time he breathed without feeling tightness in his chest. One evening, sat by his small window after another tiring day. He didn't switch on the lights. The dim glow from the street lamp outside was enough. He leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. The room was quiet inside but noisy outside. People talked as they walked past the building. Cars rushed by, and somewhere across the street a dog barked. He tried to close his eyes, hoping to calm his thoughts, but nothing worked. He picked up his phone and scrolled mindlessly. Social media, messages, work reminders, it all felt like too much. So he set the phone aside and rested his head against the wall. For the first time in a long while, he wished he had a way to pause life, even for a minute. Just a quiet, peaceful minute. That was when he heard it. A soft sound slipped through the thin wall of his apartment. At first, he thought it was someone adjusting furniture or maybe a sound from the hallway. But then the soft notes came again. Low, gentle, and warm. It was a melody. Someone in the building was playing a piano. He opened his eyes and listened carefully. The tune wasn't anything grand or complex. It was simple, like a calm conversation between the keys. Each note drifted into the room like a soft breeze. The sound was so different from everything else around him that he froze, afraid he might miss it if he moved. The melody had a natural flow, like a quiet stream running through a peaceful forest. He felt the noise from outside fading, replaced by this gentle rhythm. The air felt lighter. His breathing slowed without him even trying. He didn't know who was playing, and it didn't matter. For the first time in weeks, his thoughts finally stopped racing. He leaned closer to the wall, closing his eyes again, but this time his mind wasn't fighting him. The music carried him away from the stress of the day. He imagined the person on the other side of the wall sitting at a small piano, pressing each key with care. Maybe they were playing for themselves too, trying to find peace at the end of the day. Minutes passed, but to him, it felt like time had paused. When the melody finally ended, the silence that followed didn't feel heavy. It felt calming. He stayed still for a long time, waiting to see if the music would return, but it didn't. Even then, the calm feeling stayed with him. He sat up straight, surprised at how something so simple could change the whole mood of his day. He looked around his small room. It wasn't perfect old walls, a narrow bed, a cluttered desk, but suddenly it felt a little more comforting. He could still hear the city outside, but it didn't bother him the same way. The music had softened everything. He realized how long it had been since he listened to anything calming. His days were filled with noise and pressure, but not with peace. He used to love music when he was younger. Back then, he would spend hours listening to gentle tunes while studying, drawing, or resting. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten that music could heal. That night, instead of scrolling through his phone again, he searched for soft instrumental music. Something similar to the melody he had just heard. He found a simple piano track and played it quietly on his speaker. As the room filled with soft notes, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. The music didn't solve his problems, but it gave him a moment to breathe, and maybe that was enough for now. He lay on his bed, the soft glow of the streetlight painting faint lines on the ceiling. His eyelids grew heavier as the music played. His thoughts slowed down one by one, and for the first time in weeks, he drifted into sleep without struggling. When he awoke the next morning, the sunlight was soft and the air felt lighter. He stretched his arms and felt a small, unexpected sense of hope. That calm moment from the night before stayed with him, like a warm memory he didn't want to let go of. Eventually, he would learn just how much that simple melody would change his life. But for now, he only knew one thing. It made him feel peaceful. He walked to the window again and watched people rushing to start their day. For once, he didn't feel the pressure pressing down on him the same way. He wasn't completely relaxed, but he wasn't overwhelmed either. Later that day, while getting ready for work, he played the same piano track again. It became his small morning ritual, a few minutes of calm before stepping into the loud world outside. On the bus ride to work, he thought about the person in the next apartment. He wondered if they would play again that night. He found himself hoping they would. He wanted to feel that peaceful moment again. The day was busy as always, but whenever things started to feel too much, he remembered that soft, gentle melody. It helped him stay grounded. Even the smallest reminder of that sound made his shoulders relax. When he returned home in the evening, he listened carefully as he entered the building. He paused inside the hallway, hoping to catch even a hint of those delicate piano notes. But the building was quiet. Even then, he didn't feel disappointed. He felt grateful. The memory of the sound was enough. That night, he sat by the window again, this time with a cup of warm tea in his hands. He didn't feel rushed or stressed. He simply watched the city move. The cars passing by, the lights blinking in the distance. The people walking, everything moved at its own pace. He realized that peace didn't always come from silence. Sometimes it came from a small sound that reminded you to breathe. That melody next door had done exactly that. It opened a door inside him that he didn't know was locked before going to bed. He searched for more calming instrumental tracks and saved a few to a playlist. He played them softly as he prepared for sleep. The room felt warm, gentle, and safe. He didn't know what would happen next in his life. He didn't know how long the stress from work would continue. But he discovered something precious, that even in the middle of chaos, a simple melody could create a peaceful moment. He promised himself that he would not forget this feeling. He would give himself more of these moments, even if they were small. He would allow himself to slow down, breathe, and reconnect with the quiet parts of his heart. And that promise marked the beginning of something new in his life. A new path, a gentle shift. A quiet reminder that peace can be found in the simplest things, like a calm and beautiful instrumental melody floating across a thin apartment wall. The next few days moved in their usual pace, but something inside him had shifted. The city was still loud, the work was still demanding, and the days still felt long. But there was now a small thread of calm woven through everything. And it came from the memory of that gentle melody he'd heard through the wall. Every time he thought about it, his shoulders relaxed just a little. One bright morning, he woke up before his alarm. That rarely happened. Normally, he dragged himself out of bed with heavy eyes and an even heavier mind, but today felt different. He sat up slowly and listened for a moment. The building was quiet. There was no music this time, only the soft sound of wind brushing against the window. Still, the peaceful feeling from the night before lingered around him. Like a warm blanket, he got ready for work with less rush than usual. As he dressed, he played a soft instrumental track from the playlist he had created. The gentle notes spread through his room, bouncing lightly off the walls. Even the simple act of putting on his shoes felt easier. On the way to work, he noticed small things he usually ignored: the way sunlight landed on the pavement, the distant sound of birds, the cool morning breeze that brushed against his face. It was strange how much beauty had always been around him, yet he never had the mind to notice. The music had opened a small window in his mind, letting him see the world with fresh eyes. Work, however, remained the same. Calls, emails, people rushing, decisions to make, and tasks that piled up on his desk like a mountain that never shrank. But even during the busiest moments, he found himself humming quietly, remembering the soft melody from the apartment next door. It helped him stay centered, as if the music was guiding him through the noise. During lunch break, instead of sitting with his coworkers and listening to their stressful conversations, he stepped outside and found a quiet corner behind the building. He put on his earphones and played a calming track. The world around him moved fast, but he let the music slow things down inside his mind. For a few minutes, he felt like he was standing still while life flowed gently around him. When he returned to his desk, he felt refreshed. Even his coworkers noticed something different about him. "Long day," one of them asked, noticing his slightly peaceful expression. He smiled softly and replied, "Not as long as it usually feels." Later that evening, as he walked up the stairs to his apartment, he felt a spark of excitement. He wondered if the person next door would be playing again. When he reached his door, he paused and listened. The hallway was silent. He unlocked his door and stepped inside, still hoping, but the apartment remained quiet. He wasn't disappointed, though. Instead, he felt motivated. The melody he had heard had stirred something inside him, an old desire he once had, but had buried under responsibilities and stress. He had always admired people who could create music, whether it was a guitar, piano, flute, or anything else. He believed music had the power to reach places inside the heart that words never could. He set his bag down and walked to his desk, where his small speaker sat. The room was slowly becoming his little space of peace. He played a soft track again. The sound filled the room, warm and gentle. While listening, he found himself imagining playing his own music someday. That thought stayed with him all evening. He made himself a simple dinner and played, calming music in the background. It made the whole experience feel different, less mechanical, more alive. Even washing the dishes afterward felt more enjoyable with the soft notes drifting around him. Later that night, he sat on his bed and opened his phone. He began searching for beginner instruments, simple ones he could learn, without needing a lot of space or expensive equipment. He came across small keyboards, digital pianos, handheld flutes, calm-sounding string instruments, and even tiny callens. As he scrolled through the options, he couldn't help but smile. Something inside him felt excited, the same kind of excitement he hadn't felt in years. It was the excitement of beginning something new, something just for himself. After almost an hour of browsing, he closed the online store. He didn't want to rush. Instead, he wanted to understand what he truly connected with. But the desire to create music grew stronger inside him. He lay down and closed his eyes. He imagined himself sitting in a quiet room, slowly pressing the keys of a piano, watching a soft melody take shape under his hands. The image felt peaceful. He woke up the next morning with the same thought: music. Over the next few days, he continued exploring more instrumental music. He listened to calm piano pieces, soft guitar tunes, slow flute melodies, gentle wind chimes, and even quiet ambient sounds that felt like a blend of nature and rhythm. Every track gave him a different experience, but all of them filled him with peace. Slowly, he began identifying what he connected with the most: soft piano tones. There was something honest in them, something warm and pure. Something that reminded him of the very first melody he heard through the wall. One evening, after work, he walked into a small music store near the bus stop. The shop wasn't big, but it was filled with different kinds of instruments. Guitars hung on the walls, keyboards sat neatly on shelves, small percussion items were placed on tables. A gentle tune played softly from the speakers in the store. The atmosphere felt peaceful, like the shop was its own little world away from the noise outside. He walked around slowly, observing everything. His fingers brushed lightly across the keys of a small keyboard. He pressed one key gently. The soft note echoed slightly, pure and clear. He pressed another, then another. It felt strangely comforting, as if each key spoke in its own gentle voice. The store owner smiled when he noticed him exploring, thinking about learning. The owner asked kindly. He nodded. Something like that. "I'm not sure where to start, though." "Start where your heart feels calm," the owner said. "The right instrument will tell you." He smiled at the words. They made more sense than he expected. After trying a few instruments, he found himself coming back to a small keyboard, the simplest one in the store. It wasn't expensive, and it didn't require anything special to set up. When he pressed its keys, He felt the same softness he had felt the first time he heard the melody through the wall, without overthinking. He decided to buy it. When he reached home with the small keyboard in his hands, he felt a quiet joy rise inside him. He placed it gently on his desk, plugged it in, and sat down on the chair. He didn't know how to play properly. He didn't know the right-hand positions or the correct techniques, but he knew he wanted to create something that brought him peace. He pressed a few keys gently. The room filled with soft, simple notes, nothing complex, but warm enough to make him smile. He played slowly, exploring different sounds. Some combinations sounded soothing, while others sounded messy. But he didn't mind. Every mistake was part of the process. Every note brought him closer to the feeling he wanted to create. Minutes turned into hours. He didn't realize how much time had passed until he noticed the sky outside had darkened. He switched on a small desk lamp, and the warm yellow light created a peaceful glow. He continued playing, letting his fingers wander naturally. He didn't follow any rules. He just played what he felt. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something genuinely meaningful. Later, he leaned back in his chair and let out a deep breath. A soft smile appeared on his face. He had never felt so calm in his life. That small keyboard became his new way of ending the day. Each evening after work, sat down and played anything. Some days he created gentle melodies that made him feel warm inside. Other days he played simple rhythms that helped him unwind. Even on days when he felt stressed or tired, he touched the keys just to feel that soothing sensation again. Week by week, his playing improved. His fingers moved more smoothly, and the melodies felt more natural. It wasn't about perfection. It was about peace. One night, after almost a month of practice, he played a melody that felt familiar. It reminded him of the tune he had first heard through the wall. It wasn't exactly the same, but it carried the same warmth, the same calming tone. As he played it, he felt a quiet happiness in his chest. He realized something important. The music next door had not only given him a moment of peace, it had guided him to find his own. He didn't know who his neighbor was. He had never seen them and had no idea what their life was like, but he felt grateful for them. That one simple melody they played had changed the direction of his days. He wanted to keep going. He wanted to see how far this new path could take him, and so, with the soft glow of his lamp shining on the keyboard, he began shaping his own musical journey, one gentle note at a time. The days that followed felt brighter in a quiet, steady way. Life did not transform overnight, and the city around him remained as busy and loud as always. But something within him had begun to settle. Every evening, when he returned home, he looked forward to sitting at his small keyboard. It became his personal moment of comfort, a routine that gently softened the edges of each day. One night after work, he entered his apartment with the same small spark of anticipation that had grown stronger each day. He set down his bag, loosened his shoulders, and walked to the corner of the room where the keyboard sat. The soft yellow light from his desk lamp made the space feel warm and safe. He placed his fingers on the keys and pressed one lightly. A clean, gentle note echoed in the air. He breathed out slowly, letting the tension from the day leave his body. Then he began playing. At first, the sound was broken and uncertain. His fingers fumbled occasionally, but he didn't mind. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to create a masterpiece. He simply wanted to let his emotions flow through the notes. Something about playing the keyboard made him feel honest. He could express things he didn't know how to say out loud. The stress, the tiredness, the hopes, the quiet dreams, everything blended into the music. Over time, he started forming small patterns, little sequences of notes that sounded calm and warm. They weren't songs, not yet, but they had a feeling to them, and he liked that feeling. On one particular evening, after a long day filled with back-to-back tasks and a headache that followed him for hours, he sat down at the keyboard with a sigh. He closed his eyes for a moment before placing his fingers on the keys. When he began to play, something different happened. The notes flowed more smoothly than usual. His fingers moved without hesitation, without overthinking. The sounds came together in a gentle rhythm, soft and soothing. like a quiet stream flowing over small stones. It was the first time he felt like the music was leading him instead of the other way around. He kept playing, letting the melody grow naturally. The room felt lighter, as if the music filled every corner with warmth. It was a simple tune, but it carried a certain emotion, something soft, comforting, and peaceful. As he continued, his mind drifted to the memory of the melody he once heard through the wall. He paused for a moment. Listening to the last note fade into silence, a small smile touched his lips. He realized that he had just created something that felt familiar, yet entirely his own. Every night after that, he found himself exploring deeper into the world of sound. He watched a few short videos online about beginner techniques, not too many, just enough to get an idea of where to place his fingers or how to create smoother transitions. He didn't want to turn it into a strict lesson. He wanted the music to stay natural. As days passed, his melodies grew a little clearer, a little more defined. They still carried the same softness, the same slow rhythm that brought him peace. Sometimes he played after dinner, sometimes right before bed, and sometimes in the early morning when the world outside was still asleep. Playing at those quiet hours felt magical, like the room existed in its own gentle world, separated from the noise outside. One morning, while sitting in the early sunlight, he played a few notes almost without thinking. The tune echoed softly against the walls, blending with the warm light entering through the window. In that moment, he realized how far he had come. He remembered the first night he heard the melody coming through the wall and how overwhelmed he had felt by life. Now, he felt something completely different. Each melody he created became a small reminder that he had the power to shape peaceful moments whenever he needed them. Music slowly transformed into part of his healing, but the journey was not just about melodies. It was about understanding himself. Sometimes he found himself playing gentle tunes that felt like a slow walk through memories. Other times he played soft rhythms that resembled a heartbeat, steady, calm, reassuring. Each session told him something about what he was feeling that day. He noticed that when he was tired, his melodies sounded soft and slow. When he felt hopeful, the notes rose a little higher. When he felt lonely, he pressed the keys more gently, as if the sound itself needed comfort. Music became a way of listening to his own emotions. One evening, after finishing a peaceful melody, he leaned back in his chair and listened to the silence around him. The room felt warm and safe, but something inside him whispered that he should record his melodies. Even if just for himself. He hesitated at first. He felt strange about the idea of recording anything. He wasn't a trained musician. He didn't know if his melodies would make sense when played back. But the thought stayed in his mind. The next night he opened the voice recorder on his phone and placed it on his desk. He took a deep breath and began playing. The sound came out soft, imperfect, and real. When he finished, he stopped the recording and played it back. He listened quietly as the notes filled the room again. Hearing his own music from the outside felt surprisingly emotional. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was peaceful. It was a reflection of the calm he had been searching for. He began recording more often, capturing short melodies or simple patterns that made him feel at ease. Soon, he had several recordings saved on his phone, each one carrying a different mood. Some recordings sounded like gentle rain falling at night. Others felt like a warm morning breeze through an open window. A few sounded like footsteps on a quiet street. Every melody became a memory. He realized that music wasn't about perfection. It was about feeling. One night, while listening to one of his recordings, he felt something shift inside him. A small voice whispered that maybe others would find peace in his melodies too. Maybe the same way he found peace in the melody from his neighbor. The idea felt strange, almost too big. Why would anyone want to listen to his simple tunes? They weren't polished. They weren't professional. They were just soft moments from his quiet corner of life. But the thought didn't leave him. He began noticing how much music online helped people. Many calming instrumental tracks had comments from people saying the music helped them sleep, study, or get through hard times. He realized that maybe people didn't always need perfection. Maybe they just needed sincerity. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, he came home feeling exhausted. He sat at his keyboard and began playing slowly. The notes drifted into the air, like a soft whisper. He recorded it without thinking. When he finished playing, he listened to the recording again. It felt warm, soothing, genuine. Something inside him stirred. He opened a simple platform on his phone where people shared audio clips. His hands trembled slightly as he uploaded the recording. He didn't give it a fancy title. He didn't add anything extra. He just wrote, "A calm moment I needed today." Then he pressed upload. He didn't expect anyone to notice it the next morning. Before leaving for work, he checked his phone. A small notification appeared. One listener had left a comment. The comment said, "This helped me breathe easier tonight. Thank you." He stared at the screen, feeling a warm wave wash over him. Just one person. One person who felt the same peace that he had been searching for. It wasn't about numbers. It wasn't about attention. It was about the connection. One calm moment shared between two strangers. That single comment made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. He continued playing each night, creating simple melodies that reflected his day. Whenever a tune felt warm enough or peaceful enough, he recorded it and uploaded it quietly. Without expecting anything, people slowly began to find his tracks. Some said the music helped them sleep. Others said it calmed their mind during a stressful moment. A few said they played it while reading or studying. Every message felt like a small light. He realized that healing through sound wasn't just about helping himself. It was about sharing small moments of peace with others. Even if they lived miles away, music had quietly become his way of giving, something gentle to the world. And with every new melody, he felt himself growing, not just as someone learning an instrument, but as a person finding a new sense of calm and purpose in life. His journey with music had only just begun, but he already understood something important. Sometimes the most beautiful changes come softly, like a quiet note played in a small room, reaching a heart that needs it. And now, through his own gentle melodies, he was becoming the source of peace for others, just like his neighbor had unknowingly been for him. He had been waking up earlier than usual these days, not because he had anything urgent to do, but because the quiet hours before sunrise had slowly become the most important part of his routine. The stillness of those early moments made him feel like he had stepped into another world, one where nothing rushed him, nothing asked for his attention, and nothing demanded quick decisions. It was the one time he allowed himself to just be. And on this particular day, as he sat on the small wooden bench outside the house, he could feel something shifting inside him. He wasn't sure when music had become such a big part of his life again. For years he had treated it like something he once loved, but no longer had time for. Life had pulled him in different directions. Some he chose willingly, and some he didn't. But now, sitting in the cold morning air, he realized the old love for music never fully disappeared. It had only waited quietly, like an old friend who didn't mind the long silence. He took a deep breath and listened to the faint sounds of nature waking up. Birds chirped softly, and leaves rustled in the light breeze. These tiny sounds had become as important to him as the gentle music he played in the evenings. They made him feel connected to something bigger than himself. They reminded him that peace could be found anywhere if he decided to look for it. The night before, he had been working on a new piece of instrumental music. He didn't think of himself as a professional musician, not even close. But there was a comfort in creating simple melodies that reflected the way he felt. That peace had come from a place inside him he rarely visited. It wasn't sad, but it had something soft, something honest. He replayed it in his mind now, wondering if others would feel the same calm he felt while making it. He stood up slowly, stretching his arms before walking back inside. The warmth of the room welcomed him, and he smiled to himself. It wasn't a big home, but it held little things that made him feel grounded. The old table where he kept his notebooks, the shelf with random items he couldn't bring himself to throw away, the small piano against the wall. Each thing held memories that shaped him. After making a cup of tea, he sat at the piano and let his fingers rest on the keys. He didn't play right away. He simply sat there, thinking about how different his life felt now compared to a few years ago. Back then, everything had been fast, loud, and filled with pressure. He had lived in a constant race with time, always trying to stay ahead, always worried about falling behind. He didn't realize how exhausted he was until he finally stopped. It wasn't easy to slow down, though. At first, he felt guilty, as if resting was some kind of luxury he didn't deserve. But slowly, he learned that rest wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. And music helped him understand that more than anything else. He finally pressed a key, and another, letting the soft sound echo gently in the quiet room. The melody from last night returned slowly. It was simple, but it carried the weight of everything he had been feeling. He played it again, from the beginning, each note falling into place with a sense of purpose as he played. He remembered something he once heard, that music speaks not only when words fail, but also when emotions are too deep for normal conversations. He understood that now more than ever. He didn't need to speak to express himself. He didn't need long explanations or dramatic stories. The music he created said everything he wanted to say. After a while, he stopped playing and sat in silence. He didn't want to rush the feeling. He wanted to absorb it fully. Moments like these didn't come all the time. They were precious, like tiny pockets of peace hidden inside an ordinary day. He picked up a notebook from the table and flipped through the pages. They were filled with unfinished melodies, scattered thoughts, and small reflections about life. Some were just one sentence long, but each meant something to him. On one page he had written, "Peace is not found far away. It grows inside you when you decide to listen." He didn't remember when he wrote it, but as he read it now, he realized how true it felt. Later in the day, he went for a walk. The town was quiet, as it usually was. People moved slowly, greeting each other with gentle nods or small smiles. There was a sense of simplicity here, something he used to overlook when he was younger. Now, he appreciated it more than anything. The calm pace, the familiar faces, the way the day unfolded without unnecessary noise. It all made life feel softer. He walked near the small lake at the edge of town. The water rippled lightly, reflecting the colors of the sky. He stood there for a long moment, watching the movement of the water. It reminded him of the flow of music, how it never stayed in one place, how it kept moving even when it seemed still. A thought crossed his mind. Maybe music wasn't just something he loved. Maybe it was something that kept him steady, something that kept him connected to his true self. A few people passed by, and he nodded politely. He didn't know them well, but he recognized them. This place wasn't about knowing everyone deeply. Sometimes it was enough just to share the same quiet spaces. When he returned home, the sunlight had shifted, filling the room with a warm glow. He placed his notebook on the table and sat down again. This time, he wrote slowly, thinking about everything the day had shown him. He wrote about the lake, the breeze, the calm feeling that settled over him when he played the piano. He didn't write in complicated sentences. He wrote simply, honestly. He paused once more and looked toward the piano. A small smile formed on his face. He felt grateful not for anything dramatic or grand, but for the simple things that made his life feel meaningful. He stood up and walked toward the window. Watching the outside world settle into evening, the sky was turning a soft orange color, and the shadows grew longer. It was beautiful in a gentle way, not loud or overwhelming. Just calm. As the night slowly approached, he returned to the piano once more. He didn't plan to record anything yet. He just wanted to play, to end the day with music, to let his emotions flow quietly into the keys, and as he played, he felt again that same sense of peace, the kind that doesn't demand attention, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that simply exists. He felt more connected to himself than he had in a long time, and deep inside, he knew this journey was far from over. There was still more to discover, more to understand, and more to feel. But for now, he was simply grateful for the music that held him gently, one note at a time. The morning sky was pale and soft when he stepped outside. Holding a warm cup of tea between his hands, the air carried a quiet chill, but it felt refreshing rather than cold. He took slow breaths, letting the calmness of dawn settle inside him. This had become a habit he didn't plan but grew into naturally. Early mornings had a way of clearing his thoughts even before the day began. He sat on the same wooden bench he had used countless times now. It had small cracks on the side, and the paint had peeled a little over the years, but he liked it that way. It felt familiar, comforting, steady. Much like the routine he had built for himself, he sipped his tea while listening to the world stretch awake. He watched the horizon brighten, little by little, as if the sun was rising slowly just for him. These quiet moments always reminded him how much his life had changed. Not because something big happened, but because he finally allowed himself to slow down. He closed his eyes for a moment and let the breeze brush across his face. A peaceful smile formed without effort. The music he had worked on the night before still echoed faintly in his mind. It wasn't finished yet, but it carried a feeling he understood deeply. It was calm, gentle, and full of quiet strength. It felt like a reflection of everything he had experienced through his journey so far. When he stood up and went back inside, the house felt warm and welcoming. The faint smell of old wood mixed with the scent of tea still floating in the air. It made the whole room feel like a soft memory. He walked to the piano and placed his hands lightly on the keys, not pressing them yet. He just sat there, letting the moment breathe. He thought about how different he felt now compared to the time when he first picked up music again. Back then, he had been unsure, a little lost, trying to reconnect with a part of himself he thought he had outgrown. He remembered feeling hesitant, afraid he wouldn't be able to create anything meaningful. But now, he understood that music wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty. He slowly played a few notes, letting them rise gently into the room. The melody was soft, simple, and steady. It filled the space like a warm light. He didn't rush into the next part. Instead, he listened to the sound fade, appreciating its softness as he continued playing. He thought about the people who had listened to his earlier pieces, friends, neighbors, and even strangers online who had discovered his music by chance. Many of them had told him that his melodies helped them relax, breathe, or sleep. Some said the music made them feel understood in ways they couldn't explain. Hearing their words always touched him deeply. He didn't make music to impress anyone. He made it because it brought him peace. But knowing it brought peace to others made the journey even more meaningful. After practicing for a while, he stopped and leaned back. His fingers tingled slightly from playing, but it was a good feeling. A comforting feeling. He picked up his notebook and flipped to the newer pages, where he had written the main ideas for the final part of his composition. He read through the words slowly, taking in the emotions behind them. The notes were written in simple lines, sometimes scattered, sometimes organized. But each line carried a piece of his heart. He wrote things like, "Melody needs to feel like sunlight through a window. Keep the ending soft, not grand. Peace is not silence. It is understanding." He smiled at that last line. It felt true to him. Peace wasn't about shutting out the world. It was about seeing it clearly and still choosing calm. Later in the afternoon, he went outside again, this time walking toward the lake not far from his home. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The soft ripples moved gently, creating patterns that seemed to match the rhythm of his thoughts. He sat near the edge, listening to the sound of water touching the shore. It reminded him again why he loved instrumental music. Words could be confusing at times, but music, especially peaceful music, spoke clearly without saying anything. It allowed emotions to flow naturally, without needing explanation. As he watched the lake, he thought back on his journey. He remembered the days when stress felt heavy, when noise filled his mind, when he felt disconnected from himself. He remembered moments when he questioned his purpose or doubted his choices. But through all of that, something quiet inside him kept pushing him toward peace. Maybe it had always been music. When he walked back home as the afternoon sun warmed the ground, he felt lighter. He felt ready to finish the piece he had been working on. It wasn't just another melody. It was the final part of his journey, the part that tied everything together. Inside the house, the golden light of sunset filled the room. It cast long shadows across the floor and made the piano shine softly. He sat down, took a breath, and began playing the opening notes slowly. The sound filled the room gently, wrapping around him like a warm blanket. This time he didn't stop to think. He didn't worry about perfection. He didn't try to control every moment. He simply let the music guide him. His fingers moved naturally, following the emotions he had carried for so long. The melody grew gradually, not loud or dramatic, but steady and heartfelt. It carried the softness of morning air, the warmth of sunlight, the calmness of the lake, the quiet strength he had found within himself. It felt like a story without words, a story anyone could understand. As he reached the final lines of the melody, feeling washed over him. Not excitement, not sadness, just a deep, peaceful acceptance. The last notes faded gently into the room. Leaving behind a warm silence, he sat still for a moment, letting the calm settle inside him. He felt grateful for music, for quiet mornings, for soft evenings, for the journey that taught him how to slow down and feel again. Grateful for the simple beauty of life, he stood up and looked toward the window where the last traces of sunlight glowed. The world outside seemed peaceful, like it was breathing quietly along with him. He picked up his notebook and wrote one final line. Peace is not the end. It is the beginning. The words felt true, like they had been waiting inside him all along. As night slowly arrived, he played the finished piece one more time. And this time, he didn't think about anything else. He just let the music flow. Soft, warm, and full of life. And in that moment, he knew his journey was complete, but his music would continue. Because peace wasn't a destination he reached. It was something he learned to carry within himself, one calm moment at a time.